Hi, this is Ray Gebauer again. I'm so happy to be able to share with you, and I'm happy that you're listening, and I'm believing that you will get tremendous value from this particular teaching, because a lot is at stake. A lot is at stake. Your life is at stake. And so this can make a difference. Well, actually, it won't make any difference if you don't pay attention and implement it, but it will make a lot of difference if you take it seriously and you walk in it. It's like one of my favorite passages, Jeremiah 6:16. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, stand at the crossroads and look." In other words, pay attention. Ask for the ancient path, the way that is good for you, and then walk in it. And you'll find rest and health and peace for your soul. But they said, "We will not walk in it." So don't be like the ones who said, no, we're not going to walk in it. You got to take this seriously, because God does, and you need to as well. So let me start off with a question, maybe to get your attention. What word that starts with F is perhaps the most ugly and most deadly words that you can think of in the English language? Okay, time's up. The word I come up with is F-A-T, fat. Not only does it not look good on you when you have too much, but it can be deadly. It isn't just like some inert extra stuff. It's like a factory producing chemicals and inflammation, which actually leads to most all of the diseases, whether it's cancer or diabetes or heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's, all those things. You know, excess fat contributes to all that. But you want to hear a story? Let me tell you what happened to me. In high school, I really enjoyed wrestling. I wasn't the best, but I loved it. I still do. I'm 67. I'm tempted sometimes to go join a wrestling club. You know, I think that was the one time God actually participated in support in a sport when he wrestled with Jacob. But anyway, that time, you know, I weighed about 145 pounds. And it was good health on the swim team. And then in 1970, I went to Bible college. Stayed there for 5 years. And now, you know, I'm a free bird. I'm at college and I can do whatever I want. And I love the Bible. And I also love popcorn. And so I got my own popcorn popper and made popcorn every night because I loved it. And no one was telling me no, and you know, I'd do it myself. And for some strange reason, I started gaining weight. I got up to like 180 pounds. And eventually, I got rid of some of that, and then later I got too casual and it came back, and I think the worst I was at is 185 instead of like 145. And so I figured out what I was doing wrong and said, hey, this is too serious to neglect it. So I made some adjustments, which some of you really need to make some adjustments. And eventually got down to, now I'm 145 again. But I was in high school. My waist is 34. My blood pressure is usually about 100/60. My heart rate is 60 or less. So praise God, I'm in really good shape. But that doesn't happen automatically. Here's what happens automatically. In this culture, we tend to go the wrong direction. And so if you have excess fat, in one sense, it really isn't your fault. Because what you do, you have to do. And you can't change it. You're sort of stuck because that's your programming. Everything I do, everything you do, everything everyone does, is always consistent with your programming. The good news is, in the gospel, it says, repent for the kingdom of God's coming. And so the application here is you've got to repent, which means change your thinking and change your direction, change your action. So we start off by repenting and getting whatever help we need and make those adjustments, make those changes, because God's glory is at stake, your future is at stake. No one wants to be a statistic. We live in a day where 20,000 people die every day from heart disease, and obesity and excess fat contributes to that significantly, not to mention diabetes and heart disease. In fact, the statistics show that 70% of the population already is in at least one stage of, or the early stages of heart disease. In fact, one way to tell, a couple of simple ways you can tell within a few seconds, is just lift up your shirt, like I'm going to do right now here, and see if you can pinch, something here. I mean, if you can grab a bunch of fat. See, on me, you can't, because it's gone now, and it's going to stay gone, I guarantee you. But if you can pinch something, like if I lean over, you see you can get some fat there, that's okay. But if you're sitting up straight, you shouldn't. So if you can pinch that means you have too much fat on your body. You need a certain amount, but too much is too much. And excess fat is related to cancer and heart disease, all these things, all the kind of stuff that you really don't want. So what are you going to do about it? You say, well, it is what it is. For me, and this is maybe a harsh comparison, but think about the number one cause of death. Last year, 42 million people, innocent people, died unnecessarily by murder in the form of what we call abortion. Innocent babies were killed before they even were born, sometimes after they're born, if you can imagine that. And so, that's a tragic thing. But the rest of us are still alive. We are, in a sense, aborting our own life, our future life, slowly. It's like slow suicide. And it's sort of become socially acceptable. It's like in this country, abortion is, for the most part, acceptable. It's considered legal, even though it's totally illegal as far as God's concerned. It's immoral because you're killing another person. One of the 10 Commandments, right? Thou shalt not kill. But it's accepted. It's sort of okay. It's the same thing with being overweight. And it's sort of like the famous analogy about the elephant in the room. There's a huge elephant in the room and everyone is ignoring it or not even seeing it because they're focused on something else. So among Christians, among the whole population, that's sort of the elephant in the room that's become socially acceptable to be overweight. And so it feels normal, feels comfortable because pretty much everybody is. In fact, just last night I was reading an article and based on this last study out of Germany, they said 88% of the population is not metabolically healthy. And over 80% of the people are not at the right weight. Now the other way to measure, then I'm going to get to what you can do now. It's one thing to address the problem, but then it's a waste of time if you don't do something about it. And also, by the way, it's a waste of time to lose weight if you're going to gain it back. You're much healthier just to stay fat than to lose it and gain it back, because now you've damaged your whole system and it makes everything much more difficult. But another simple way to measure your state of health in terms of weight is your waist size, your circumference. And here's what it should be. It should be 50 to 45% of your height. So if you're in inches. And so if you're like say 6'8", that's 68 inches tall. So that means, to cut that in half, that means your waist should be 34 inches. So if you're above 34 inches, you got too much fat. Now, by the way, the fat in the abdominal area is, all the research shows that's the most dangerous fat in your body. It's bad enough that your arms are fat, or your legs are fat, or hips, or whatever else. But when the fat's accumulating in your waist and abdominal area, that's the most dangerous part of the body and is most highly correlated to heart disease and cancer. So do the measurements. What is your waist size? And then you got to commit to doing whatever it takes to get it down to where it needs to be, because there's too much at stake. If you take this, if you stay too casual, you become a casualty. It's astounding to me that believers will come to a meeting and they bring a bunch of donuts and bad stuff, and it's like it's okay. It's sort of like, I came to Bible study, say, all of you who love mushrooms, these are the most delicious mushrooms in the world. They make you feel fantastic, and just, I brought enough for everybody, and just take as much as you want. Take some home. He said, it tastes good and it feels good. If it tastes so good, what could be wrong with it? And people started eating. These are fantastic mushrooms, And say, by the way, just so you know, these are actually poisonous mushrooms. It won't kill you right away, but it probably will cut 10, 20 years off your life. And before that, you'll start, going downhill, and you'll probably get cancer or diabetes or something. So would you keep eating those mushrooms, even if they tasted really fantastic? No. Or if it's maybe ice cream, but I put some poison in that ice cream that's going to cut years off your life and move you towards diabetes and cancer, heart disease, would you still eat that ice cream? I hope not. Some people still will. But you can be the exception. You don't have to do that. Plus, God sort of warns us, not sort of, he warns us very sternly. He says, if you, in 2 Corinthians 3, 16, 17, your body's a temple of the Spirit. And so if you destroy your temple by bad eating or however, then God will destroy you. So God's warning us. People taking communion, he says, if you don't do it, you're not honoring the Lord's Supper properly. That's the reason some of you are weak and you're sick and you're dying. So that's God's judgment. I don't think God needs to be doing much judgment on us. Because we're killing ourselves. And so we don't believe in suicide. We don't believe in abortion or murder. But the reality is most people are doing that to themselves. And they're sort of in denial because it feels comfortable, everyone else is, and we have the habits. And once it's not your fault because that's your program. But here, where the responsibility does come, is you can change your programming. I mean, it doesn't say somewhere in the Bible about renewing your minds. I think it's Romans 12, right? So with God's help, combined with our commitment, we can change things for the better. And if you don't, it's your choice. God can't help you if you keep choosing to do the wrong thing. And the Bible does talk a lot about gluttony. It doesn't talk a whole lot about it because they didn't have junk food. They didn't have processed food back then. And so just a tiny percentage of the population had this problem. I don't know, maybe 1% or less. The rich people that they never worked and, they just ate a lot, sit around eating. But nowadays it's become part of our culture, so it's so comfortable, like, we just do what everyone else does. But if you do what everyone does, you get what everyone gets. And how's that going to work out? Not too well. Solomon warned us in Ecclesiastes 7:17. Says, don't be a fool. Why should you die before your time? Well, we live in a society where 90% of the people are dying before their time. So what does that make them? Well, I guess it makes us fools if we're doing the things that lead us to a premature death, and not just dying prematurely, but suffering unnecessarily, whether it's with cancer or Alzheimer's or stroke or diabetes or all these things. So it's not a pretty picture. So I told you my story. I got drifting the wrong direction, and I made a course correction. And I'm pleading with you to do that for your own sake, for God's glory, and for your family and your friends. If you die before your time, probably some people will miss you. And plus, God will miss out on some glory he could have had by you living your full lifespan. If God's given you the capacity to live to 80, 90, or 100, and you only live to 55 or 60, how does that fit in with what Jesus said, by this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples? You can't bear much of the full capacity of fruit if you're not around. And plus, it doesn't honor God. So if you are, in your heart, really committed to honoring God and making God happy and smile and feeling better in the meantime and avoiding those deadly bullets, dodging those bullets and diseases, this is one of the key things you've got to do. Not just to look good, because it will help you look better to lose the excess fat, but also you'll feel better and you'll live longer. Now, I realize that most people listening, I probably wasted your time because you're not going to change anything, and I feel bad for you. In fact, let me tell you what happens to me every time I go to airport or I'm around a whole bunch of people, like in a church even. I think of what Paul said in, I think it's Acts 17, where he was going into the city of Athens, and where he shared the gospel. But when he first went in, he says his spirit was disturbed within him because he saw something that wasn't good, and it just really bothered him. He said because, in this case, he saw that the city was full of idols. And then he talked to them about the unknown God, but he was disturbed, and that's how I feel. I see all these people that are overweight, and sort of like this unspoken conspiracy. I won't call you on your stuff if you don't call me on my stuff. Almost everyone's fat, but we never talk about it. It's like it's taboo. Like sex used to be taboo. No one ever talked about sex. And now it's way out there too much. Well, we're not talking enough about violating God's values and standards by being overweight. So anyway, first I got to get your attention. And some of you will try to lose weight and you won't be successful because you have to do enough of the right thing. So I'm going to share with you some ideas of what you can do, because understanding the problem is just the first step. It doesn't get you to where you want to go. So the good news is that there's a lot of things you can do that aren't real complicated, but you have to do it consistently. Otherwise, it's not going to work. I mean, it's okay to have ice cream and cake and cookies and all that stuff. It's not going to hurt you if you do it occasionally, maybe once a month. And if you're in a serious health condition, say you have diabetes or cancer or some serious disease, or you're low energy, you probably shouldn't have it at all for maybe a year just to get back on track. But the bad stuff won't hurt you if it's just on a rare occasion. But when people are eating bad stuff every day, it's like accelerating, putting your foot on the accelerator, and you're accelerating yourself to go over the cliff. It's like, hey, guys, we're on the Titanic. I know it's comfortable, it's nice, but when it hits the big chunk of ice, it doesn't end nice. So get off the Titanic, because we're all metaphorically, we're on this Titanic in this culture, and people are oblivious. And some people, they're trying to, and it's not working. They get on some program, some diet, and whatever, and they lose the weight for 6 months or a year, and then it all comes back. And so I'm telling you, diets don't work. Or if they work, they don't work long term. They work sometimes short term, but you've got to do enough of the right things. It isn't like just one thing, like all you got to do is just drink more water. Well, that will help, but that's probably not going to be enough. To have a full, good grip, how many fingers do you need? Probably all 5 to get the best grip. So you can't just do one thing. Well, if I just cut out sugar, that's going to help a lot. If you just exercise, that's going to help too. But don't just do one. You got to do a number of things. So I'd like to get some tips. Having been there and done that myself and helped a lot of other people, and now I'm going to help you. And like I said, I can't help you though if you don't listen, pay attention, and walk in the ancient path, like Jeremiah talked about, God's way, the path of life. The path of life isn't just spiritual, it's your whole life, body, mind, and spirit. So here's a real simple thing you can do. Keep a journal of what you eat every day. That helps you stay on track, be more aware. And ideally write down what you're going to eat before you eat it. So that's one simple thing. Can you do that? I think you can. And then when you do eat, before we get into what to eat, another thing to do is, and some people just doing this, it's enough for them to lose weight. And it isn't about losing weight, it's getting the fat down. I don't care what weight I am, more than 145 or 165 or 85, if it's mostly muscle, But it's the fat that's so damaging, which, the fat is like a a factory that's producing these inflammatory chemicals. It isn't like just some sand with some extra weight. It's producing these chemicals that is destroying you from the inside out. And so we got to, if you don't want to be overcome by this, you've got to be an overcomer. So here's another thing you do is chew your food like 30 times each bite. So eat more slowly, chew your food thoroughly. So many people, they'll chew it a couple times and swallow it down with some Coke or something, you know, which isn't healthy. You need to chew your food thoroughly anyway to get better digestion, but also it lengthens the time of the meal and you're less likely to eat less without even trying. Because I'm telling you, willpower will only take you so far and then it runs out of steam. So you can't assume or believe that willpower is all you need, because willpower doesn't work long term. The only thing that works long term is habits. Like, how much willpower does it take to brush your teeth every day? Not really any, because it's a habit. Habits don't take willpower. But if you're relying on willpower, it's not going to work out so well, and it's going to be another failure. So ultimately, you've got to deprogram your brain, reprogram God's values, and do it consistently and have habits. Now, one of the other things that will help you to create that habit is to get accountability. Don't go solo. Don't try to be the Lone Ranger on this and say, I can do this, or even I can do this with God's help. Well, God designed us to be connected with other people and work together. You know, two are better than one. And so don't try to do this on your own, because your chances of failing are extremely high trying to do it on your own. I mean, you've tried to do it on your own before. How did that work out? You know, so you need to get some help. I don't necessarily mean go to a doctor, but just like a good friend, and be accountable every day. Create accountability by setting up a habit and behavior of, say, weighing yourself every day. Now, weight isn't the best measurement, but it's useful and it's simple and easy to do. It just takes a few seconds. So you might say, well, why would I do that? It just reminds me of my problem. Well, that's the point. You got to be reminded. And so it isn't like the scale's going to go down every day. Some days it might even go up, but it doesn't matter. We're in this for the end game, the long term. So if you're serious, go weigh yourself every day. And better yet, or do both, get a measuring tape and a cloth measuring tape and measure your waist every day. And write it down. What is it? So today it's like 39. And it might be 39 for the next week. But if you're doing enough right things, then it's going to go to 38 and a half and 38. You want to get it down to the low 30s, below 35, depending on your height. Your goal is to get your circumference of your waist down to 50 or ideally 45% of what your height is. But for now, we'll just go 50%. That's easy. Okay, so can you do that? I know you can. Actually, everything you need to do is easy, but the downside is also easy not to do. What's easy to do is easy not to do. The difficult part is doing it consistently, and you have to do enough. Okay, I mentioned about drinking more water. Sometimes you feel hungry. I got to eat something. Well, have a glass or two of water. In fact, that's the best way to start your day. I typically will have 16 to 32 ounces of water every day in the morning before I eat. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about timing in a bit here as well, and what you eat. But oftentimes when we feel hungry, like we need something, just drink some water, and that's really all you need. So maybe you're not really hungry, maybe you're just thirsty, but it felt like hunger. So that's another little trick that you can do to help yourself. And most people don't drink enough water anyway. You need water to help keep things moving, to detoxify your body. You think about like a washing machine. It needs water, right? But if you just put 1 or 2 cups of water in, how's that going to work out? You need enough water to do the job. And so you probably need 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. Some people need more than that. And that's in addition to other fluids, like coffee, which I highly recommend you have 4 to 5 cups a day of coffee. and don't spoil it by putting in sugar and other stuff, especially artificial stuff or creamers. That's even really, really bad. But in addition to the coffee and tea, which is also good, and by the way, the opposite of what's good is the sodas. I mean, that's like cancer in a can. So much sugar. And the artificial sweeteners are even worse than the sugar. The sugar is deadly. Sugar is seductive. So that's one of the things you've got to start avoiding. Like I've said before in another class, is simple math. It's not calculus or algebra. It's simple math that I learned in the first grade. You probably did too, maybe even before first grade. And just, simple addition and subtraction. You got to do both. You got to, congruent with the idea of repentance, you got to subtract out of your life that which is hurting you. Stop poisoning your body. You're defiling the temple of God. So who wins in that? God doesn't win. You don't win. And plus you're inviting judgment. And plus other people judge you, even though not so much anymore because most everyone's fat anyway, so it's sort of okay. But it's not okay as far as God. It's not. Are you okay with it? Do you like how you look? Do you like how you feel? Do you like how this moves your odds against you as far as longevity and vitality and health? So you got to take this seriously and do this consistently. So here's another tip. You've got to get rid of not just the sugar, and maybe once a month is okay if you're in decent health, just not too often. But also foods that are high glycemic. High glycemic means that they convert quickly to sugar. So like you eat a baked potato, how much sugar is in a baked potato? 0, really. Or a piece of wheat bread. There's no sugar in that. But the carbohydrates are simple carbohydrates that break down to sugar. That's what carbohydrate is. It's just a chain of sugars. So a high glycemic food is one that breaks down quickly into sugar. So you eat a baked potato, you think, I didn't get any sugar. No, you got a whole bunch of sugar. It's just the body is going to break it down, and then you get a bunch of sugar. Same thing with rice and most grains. In fact, the number one culprit that really hurts our health is, of all the grains, is wheat. Now, if you're eating wheat maybe in Europe or some other countries, it's not so bad, but in the US, wheat is really bad for your brain. It's bad for weight gain. In fact, when you eat wheat, it actually turns on, I think it's 78 different genes that promote obesity and inflammation. Whereas like rye actually turns on different genes that reduces inflammation and obesity. Most people are sensitive to gluten, even if it's not obvious. Oats are actually pretty good, except in the US. Virtually 100%, well, from what I read, 100% of all oats tested, and I almost hate to say this because I think oats can be a good food, even though they have some gluten in them, but all oats are sprayed with glyphosate, which is really, really bad. And so unless you get oats from another country, let's say Spain or Italy, or you probably shouldn't be eating oats, or not too often, because that's more poison. You already get enough poison in the air you breathe, the water you drink. There's so many things you got to be aware of. Okay, so you've got to get rid of the high glycemic foods, things that convert easily to sugar, like your grains in particular. And that was one of the key things that I discovered that was keeping me stuck at being too fat. A number of years ago, I was eating too much grains, and it was even healthy grains. I was eating millet every morning. Millet's a pretty good grain. But it was still overloading my system, and when I eliminated that and reduced the frequency, then the weight came off. So fruits and vegetables are really important. You've heard the saying, an apple a day will keep the doctor away. Well, there's some truth to that. One apple a day, the studies have shown, reduce your risk of a stroke by 52%. It doesn't eliminate it, but it's helpful. And one of the reasons is it has a quercetin in it. Pears and apples are particularly high in quercetin. So an apple a day is helpful and will also contribute to your goal of losing excess fat. But the other aspect is fiber. You've got to get enough fiber. And don't buy fiber products. Eat food that's high in fiber, like fruits and vegetables. Be careful with the high glycemic fruits like bananas, the tropical fruits. They're delicious, but too much can push you in the wrong direction. And if you do have something that's high in starch, make sure you balance it in the meal with enough healthy fat and protein, so it's the glycemic load overall for that meal that's most important, rather than just the glycemic index of that single food. So you can have potatoes. Potatoes aren't a bad food, but you need to make sure you have enough butter on it, or maybe sour cream, enough protein with it so it counteracts that high glycemic effect. Another point that's really important is you don't want to focus on losing weight. It's sort of like the coach who told the little boy playing baseball, it says, when you see the ball coming, make sure you don't miss the ball. Okay, so in one sense, that's good advice. Don't miss the ball. Keep your eyes on the ball and don't miss the ball. But that's a negative command. And that can sort of backfire because, they say that the mind tends to doesn't always register the negative part of the sentence. So the little kid is thinking about not missing the ball, which increases the chance of missing the ball because he's thinking about not missing the ball. So that's what he does. He misses the ball. So my advice to you is don't think about losing weight. I mean, think about it a little bit. Say, man, look in the mirror and say, man, I'm fat. I made bad decisions that got me here. It wasn't my fault because it's my programming. I'm changing my programming. I'm really overweight. Doesn't honor God. Doesn't honor me. I don't look good. Don't feel good. So a little bit that's okay. But then you got to shift away and focus on the positive. Your goal isn't really to lose weight or lose fat. That's really secondary. Your ultimate goal is to be healthy, to glorify God. And if you do that and you live consistent with His values, congruent with what the Scripture says, honoring your temple, honoring God, not violating, like one of the commandments, thou shalt not kill. Well, you're killing yourself. Don't be a murderer. Even though it's accidental, it's not intentional, but you are. So now you know. So don't focus on what not to do. Focus on what you really want, which is to be healthy. I don't care what weight you are, but you want to be healthy. But you can't be healthy if you're overweight. And plus, another interesting study I read recently, which just sort of gets your attention, it said bigger bellies mean smaller brains. It's the truth that the bigger your belly is, the smaller your brain. Your brain starts to shrink as the effect from having a big belly and too much fat. And by the way, the other way the body stores fat is around the organs. So when you have excess fat that the body can't get rid of, it starts putting it like in the closets, or in this case, around the organs, around your liver, your kidneys, and your heart. And then when you can't store any more fat around the organs, so where are we going to put this fat? Okay, then it starts loading it up in the belly. So it shows up in the belly. So you might have a flat belly and still have too much fat. So the belly fat is like a later stage of storing excess fat. Another element to losing excess fat, in addition to not focusing on it, but focusing, your goal is really to be healthy, is that you want to believe that you can do this. Maybe you failed 100 times or 1,000 times. And most people fail. But I'm telling you, you can be the exception. You don't have to be like the 80% of the people that carry too much fat, and a lot of them, they lose it and they get it all back, and now they're worse off. You better just stay fat the rest of your life than to lose it and get it back and forth. The yo-yo effect, that's really, really hard on your body. So other things that you can do is, a lot of people are low in iodine. Iodine is necessary for the thyroid, which affects your metabolism. So if you have low metabolism, you can't burn fat as easily. Another thing that you can do is to pay attention to leptin, or at least learn about leptin. Leptin is a hormone, sort of like insulin, but it does different things. Leptin determines whether the body stores the fat or burns it up. Now, which would you rather have? Rather the body burn the fat or store it? Well, most people, they're storing the fat rather than burning it up. So, and people become leptin resistant, like insulin resistant. So you might even have enough leptin, but if you're leptin resistant, the signals aren't getting through, and so the body keeps storing the fat. So what you can do, one of the best foods for this, and this is one of the areas where I specialize in, is a particular food called whole complete colostrum. And colostrum is naturally high in leptin, and the doctor that I work with, Dr. Klein-Smith, has formulated some colostrum-based products that really help the body utilize the leptin properly. Because most products and most diets, particularly products, most of them are a scam. You know, you could have weight loss coffee and it works really well, or weight loss tea, or this product or that product, and you use stimulants, and it works really well for a lot of people for a while, and then the body gets used to it, and the body figures it out. It was being tricked. And said, okay, we got this figured out, and you go back to where you were. So in a sense, most products are a scam, maybe not intentionally, because they give you short-term benefits, and you really want long-term. You don't want to be losing weight and just bounce back like the yo-yo. And so this is one food that we found particularly helpful. I know people who lost 100 pounds and have kept it off because correcting the leptin resistance. And by the way, don't just go out and get any colostrum, because most of it's like fake colostrum, because it's mostly milk. So maybe reach out to me and I can give you some guidance as to what kind of colostrum to get. Now, this would be incomplete if I didn't talk about another element of this that's easy to do, because you're already doing it, but you're just probably not doing it enough. And that is movement. Not just vigorous exercise, which is ideal, like running up and down the stairs, you know, or sprinting, you know, for 10, 20 seconds, you know, vigorous, high-intensity exercise. That's really, really good. You know, 20 or 30 seconds at a time. But also just walking. So you're already doing some walking, right? Everybody does pretty much, unless you're in a wheelchair or confined to bed. But most people don't walk enough. And the best place to walk is outside, because not only is the air fresher, but you're around nature, and just being in that environment of the trees and the grass and the flowers, all that is helpful. But if you have to walk on a treadmill or walk back and forth in the room 100 times, whatever it takes, you need more walking, and ideally more than once a day. And even more important than the walking is, and that's an addition or just more of what you're already doing. Most people don't do enough. And by the way, what I do, I'm really blessed to live just like a couple hundred feet from a really nice little woods. So I go walking in the woods with my dog, and there's a couple hundred evergreen trees in Vancouver, Washington. And it's such a wonderful experience. It's not quite as good as visiting Hawaii, but it's up there, it's real close. But I do it every day. It's the frequency of doing this. But even more important than the walking, as important it is, and don't put that down too low on your list of things to do, but you've got to stop sitting too long. Sitting kills you. And most Americans are sitting 6 to 8, 10 hours a day. And that's a huge contribution, a negative contribution to being overweight and having too much fat. So here's the guidelines. It's real simple to do, and I'm afraid that most of you won't do this. But I'm asking you, please, for God's glory, your health, your better future, because the rest of your life really can be the best of your life, but it doesn't happen automatically. Some things you got to take charge and just do what's right, because everybody wins that way. So here's the general guideline. Don't sit more than 30 minutes. So if you have to sit all day, well, get up every 30 minutes. If you have a cell phone or some kind of alarm, set it for every 30 minutes. So you're getting up every 30 minutes. And if you can, you do as much of your day standing. Like I talk to people all day. I never sit down when I'm talking. I'm always standing or walking around. Even my computer, I have it up here, so I don't sit down. So when I'm on my computer, 99% of the time, I'm standing up. And so that's really important. So I hope you will take that seriously as one of the tips. Sitting kills you. They're calling sitting now like the next cigarettes, or cigarette epidemic, or it's almost as deadly as cigarettes because there's a lack of movement, and it's not good to stand all day either. You need to sit down. It's good to lie down several times a day for maybe just 30 seconds or a minute, just changing the posture so you're changing the angle, the gravity on your whole system. It's just the effect on the organs. And so, okay, one last piece of advice that I have at the top of my head here that's critically important, and that is, in the bigger picture, the cause of all problems and all health diseases and dying prematurely is stress overload, which I've talked about in different classes. So just to bring that up again, stress is the factor. There's 5 kinds of stress: physical, chemical, electromagnetic, deficiency-based, where you're not getting enough, say, vitamin D or enough vitamin C, enough colostrum, enough water, enough sleep. Oh, I got to say that. Sleep. If you don't get at least 7, 8 hours of sleep, you're sabotaging your better future, your better health. You've got to do that. Don't take sleeping pills. That dramatically increases your risk of heart attack and diseases. High levels of melatonin or whatever you have to do. Do some research. But if you don't get 7 to 8 hours sleep, you're not going to live as long, and your risk of heart disease and diabetes, cancer goes way up. That's your restoration time. So that's part of the formula, part of the recipe to get your weight down to where you need. So you got to manage your stress. And let me just give you one little quick technique right here. I learned this back in 1978 in applied kinesiology. I know a lot of techniques, probably a couple hundred, but this is the single most important one. These are called the ESR points. They're neurovascular reflex points on the body, and you've already done this most likely because people intuitively do this subconsciously because it helps. And these points are right here on the forehead, about halfway between the eyebrows and the hairline, and just by lightly touching, about the same pressure you put on your eyeballs, so not much, just a real light pressure, and just holding that like this, or with one hand or your whole palm, and think about whatever the concern is. If you have some worry about something, or you're upset, if you have doubts, well, I don't know if I could actually lose this fat that I really need to. Well, part of the reprogramming is letting go of stress and trauma, and while you're working on establishing habits, this can be part of that. It's a real simple technique. People underestimate how powerful it is. I use it every day on myself for multiple reasons, and I recommend this. It's really easy to do, and it's also easy not to do. So, did I share anything today that was way too difficult for you? I don't think so. Everything is easy to do and it's easy not to do. And it's not going to do you any good if you don't do it. So even if you don't do everything I've told you, start with a few of those things. Weigh yourself every day. Drink more water. Eat more slowly. Keep a journal. Walk more. Get rid of that sugar. Don't be seduced by the dark side of pleasure, which is like too much sugar and carbohydrates. Get rid of wheat as much as possible, and soybeans and most of the grains. Corn is pretty bad too. The genetically modified foods, get chemicals out of your system. And so, let me leave you with a promise. It's like there's a lot of promises in the Bible, right? If you want to get what's promised, if you want to get into the promised land, if you want to get into the kingdom, you got to meet certain requirements. So my promise to you, serious. If you incorporate the things I've shared, I promise you that you can get to where you want to go. Now, don't go to extreme. The keto diet works really, really well for short term. I'm concerned about long-term effects. Becoming a vegan, that can work really well for short term. I'm concerned about those long-term effects. I think those are two extremes. So you got to be careful with that, going either extreme. And I think moderate amount of protein, good healthy fat, olive oil, avocados, eggs, things like that. Not too much protein. But all these other things are important too. You know, the sleep, the water, the walking, lowering your stress, make sure you're in alignment with God and you're loving God with all your heart and living for Him and doing this for His honor and glory and for your good and your family's good. And so you can bear more fruit for the Father, for His glory, and He'll smile even more at you and be proud of you, and you'll feel better about yourself, how you look and how you feel, and everyone wins. If you don't do this, everyone loses, including you. You don't want to be a loser. God calls us to be more than conquerors, and you probably don't have what it takes to do all this on your own. That's why you need help, you need accountability. You pray, but that's probably not enough. You need to do all these things and do whatever it takes so you can have healthy. Like John said in the third epistle, he said, "Beloved, I pray for you that in all respects that you prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers." So your soul might be prospering now, but he says, hey, don't neglect the health of your body. It's the whole picture. So God wants you to be healthy in your body just like your soul. So don't neglect either one. Okay? Thank you for listening. God bless you.